Hello one and all, my name's John Cloud, this is John Starkart, and as always, you are very welcome. Today's piece is a piece I call The Unity of All Things. Bit of a pompous title, I know, but this is based on the Ouroboros. Now, if you don't know what the Ouroboros is, I'm going to bring that for you now. As you can tell, it's a snake eating its own tail. The idea behind it, I think a lot of the kind of mythology behind it is life and death. I know, John talking about death in one of his videos, shock, horror. But anyway, yeah, the idea behind it is the cycle of life and death, rebirth and all that kind of crack. And I'll bring it up for you here now. This is the piece itself. And as you can tell, it's probably my own little kind of take on it. The fact that, you know, the snake and the most of the body, it's more focused on the snake eating its tail, the actual, you know, the head of the snake. And I thought it could be a cool piece to talk about for the Miscellaneous Dark Creatures series. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the time-lapse replay and we're going to talk about the creation, the making, the process behind me making this piece. Anyway, we'll do that now. Okay, so here we are. We're in Procreate, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the piece for you. Here we are. And as I want to do to illustrate just how long this takes me, I'm going to go into canvas information, statistics, and as you can see here, it's taken me 42 hours and 54 minutes in total to do this piece, and total strokes made were 20,340. I actually started this piece, I've done this a few times, where like I'll start a piece, leave it alone, then come back at it and finish it later on, or improve it after a certain period of time, because I think there is scope there for it to be improved. And with this one, it was just basically I started it and then got distracted and didn't pick it up again until fairly recently, where I thought, okay, there is a solid idea behind this piece and I think I should really finish it off. So what we're going to do now, if I go into time-lapse replay, here we are, as per usual, there we are. What I'll do, because this is actually, if I rotate it, this is actually how I drew it. The intention for it was to be vertical because I like to show my stuff up on social media, and you know, reels is a thing these days. As you can tell what I'm doing at the moment, let's go back a minute. Like the setup, like the actual setup for this piece is fairly straightforward. It's literally just like I drew two lines and then drew the snake head around it and then kind of fitted the head around the body, so to speak. And as you can tell, like in the early stages, there's a lot of kind of roughing out. And as I said before, I'm not one of these people who meticulously and laboriously plans out my pieces ahead of time. A lot of my working out is gone on up here beforehand. Obviously, I use references, which I've explained to you before. And I did use a reference for this piece. And the reason why I used the reference is because, like, as you can tell with these snake scales, I wanted it to look convincing. The eye, I like the way snake eyes look, the kind of like the brow over, the eyes, the way the scales are formed. I wanted there to be a basis of fact in what I was making. As you can see here now, I'm kind of roughing out everything, drawing the scales on the back. Again, because I'm not one of these people who does under drawings either. So what I tend to do is I'll very roughly draw everything out, and then I'll clean up those lines after the fact using my I'll show you what I usually use. What I usually use when I'm cleaning up, cleaning up lines, I literally just go into my eraser brushes, go to inking, and I use technical pen. The reason why I prefer that is because it gives a clean line for when I'm erasing. So it enables me to kind of clean up the lines that I am using in the drawing, and then using that as the basis for everything else that follows, the shading and everything else. So I'll skip ahead now. This is where I start shading in the scales, and this is quite a work like this that's really time consuming and really quite laborious, but also at the same time, for me at least anyway, I find it incredibly rewarding, just losing myself in kind of all these like little details. And as you can tell here, like if you look at the eye here, we punch in a little bit and you look at the eye, doing things like this make the difference between an eye looking alive and looking dead. In one of my previous videos, I talked about how in some of my familiars, I like to have this kind of unnatural, either onyx look, or maybe I'll white out the eyes. But sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I think it's more appropriate to keep the eye in, to make it look like, and make the eye the focus, the center point of it. And I think with this, because, you know, it is the center point in my view, or became the center point. And I think with this piece is that there's a lot of going backwards and forwards. You know, I started one section. Also, another thing I was doing here, if I show you, you notice that I shaded out the underneath of it. Then I do it again, and then I'll do it again. First off, what I did there was, if we go back to the first time I did it, I was being lazy, right? What I did was I drew out the lines and then I kind of shaded over the top of them, and I thought, no, that doesn't look quite right, right? So I tried it again, still wasn't happy with it, went back over again. But this time here, what I did was I opened up a separate layer, and unfortunately I lost the layers on this piece, so I can't demonstrate that. I should make a point of like keeping all my layers so I can really show you guys in future. So what I did here was, this is actually a good example. Right, so what I've done here was I've shaded each of the individual scales again underneath on a separate layer, and that's what I carried on throughout the rest of it. And I think it's a lot more subtle. Like I said before, like contrast is important, and I think you should not be afraid of contrast, but sometimes you can be very heavy-handed with contrast. And I think it's important to like take your time. And if something doesn't work, and again, the great thing about working digital, it enables you, if there isn't the commitment, if you mess something up, you can go back through your history, and you can revisit it at the point beforehand, and then kind of work on it again and try a different way of doing things. And that's what I did with this, and it's very much the same thing here. So we scan through. Also, what I'm trying to do here, like, so I've shaded out each of these individually, as the animation shows. Like, if I slow it right down, you can see that I'm literally doing each block individually. And then what I'm doing again is I'm coming over again with a heavier line, and then using a highlight. And again, to do that, I was using Technical Pen. So to get the black lines there, those clean black lines, I use Technical Pen, which you can't really use with a pencil brush, unfortunately. I mean, pencil brushes are great for texture, but if you want like a cleanness to it, you really do need to use like an inking brush. So that's what I did there. And when it came to the actual shading, I think a lot of it was about texture. You know, I was kind of building up the texture over time, you know, working over the top. As you can tell here, like so it's kind of twitching, there we are. You can see here, like these are like I'm shading each scale individually, and I'm taking my time with them. The fact that I'm able to kind of have a look and see what's going on underneath, it gives you a good picture as to, you know, what I'm doing and what I'm looking to achieve. And then yeah, there it is blacked out. And I'm very happy with how this piece turned out. I like it, and the reason why I like it as much as I do, I like the fact that I've kind of punched in on the snake. I mean, if you see every other Ouroboros that's ever been depicted, it's usually like the entirety of the, you know, the snake, you know, the whole thing about whether it's an infinity symbol or whether it's, you know, a circle. But what I did was I was kind of the real, if you like, where the action is taking place, the snake eating its tail, this is where the action is taking place. And the fact that the body extends out beyond the piece is still, I feel at least anyway, it still kind of gives that feeling of like this kind of all-encompassing, it still gives the feeling of the initial Ouroboros symbology, but it kind of punches in, and I don't know, I've got to be honest, man, I'm having trouble articulating it, and I think that's kind of the difficult part of being an artist. I mean, it's not to say that I'm not articulate and I can't usually put my thoughts into words. I'm usually pretty good at that. But when I'm drawing, I'm thinking visually. I'm thinking, you know, the process that's going on in my head is not, I'm not thinking about it in words. I'm thinking about it in what works in terms of the visuals. And I think this works. I think it works, because it's because of how dark it is and how much the eye pops. I like it. I like the fact that even though it's quite dark, there's still a lot of texture in it. I'm very happy about that. And I think generally it works as a piece. But then, my thoughts are my thoughts, and your thoughts are going to be completely different. And I'm sure, if you do have thoughts in it, you might even mention it down in the comments. Who knows? So anyway, I think it's time for us now to round this out, shall we? So yeah, that was the Unity of All Things. It's a piece I'm pretty happy with. Happy enough to put it up on sale on the website. So yeah, if you'd like to go up to johnsdarkart.com, you'll see the prints up there for sale. 2 sizes, A3, A4, 2 prices, 45 and 75 euros. If you like what we're doing, you'd like to support what we're doing, please head up there and pick yourself up a print. Thank you very much. So anyway, in terms of like doing this piece and making this piece, I think it's pretty pertinent that I was having trouble towards the end of the last section articulating exactly what the piece is about, because I don't know, man. I think when it comes to, I think talking about putting art into words is, in a strange sort of way, it's really counterintuitive and it's counterproductive in a lot of ways, because art is a form of communication. Yeah, we communicate as a species verbally, but we also communicate visually, through body language, through intonation or whatever else, how your body's positioned. If you're angry, your face is flushed with red and your eyes are really intense, or if you're relaxed, your body language is completely different. And to be honest with you, visual communication is a lot more, if you like, subliminal, and I think with art is not, it's not like music, where like if you're in a concert watching your favorite band or your favorite artist, it's more of a communal experience, and music tends to move people more. Something as an artist I'm actually quite envious of. But when you go to see art, it's a lot more restrained. If you go to a gallery, everyone's very quiet, everyone's very hushed, you can't touch the art, you gotta sit there in quiet contemplation. I don't know, I think art is in of itself is a very different medium. It's one of our oldest art forms. You go to the Le Croix caves in France, like the oldest paintings that we know of that are made by humans, the oldest representative paintings made. I know I use Pablo Picasso all the time, but again, the guy is so bloody influential, you can't really escape him. But he went to the La Croix caves and he turned around and said, "We've created nothing." And I think that's quite pertinent, because there is no new ideas under the sun, not really. There's new technologies, AI, something that we're all having to kind of deal with at the moment, whether you're an artist or a musician, all these images being generated out of thin air. But is it the same as a person creating it? I don't think it is. The actual art behind art, the communicative aspect of it, I think it is very difficult to articulate. This is why art is open to interpretation more often than not. I've mentioned this before, where like, just because I'm telling you what I think a piece is about, it's not necessarily the thing that you're going to pick up on as the viewer. And that's what makes art very interesting to me. Like when people have commented on my work, and some people say they're impressed by the detail that I put in and the time that I put in and whatever else, but then they won't always get what it is I'm trying to communicate. And you can get frustrated by that if you allow yourself to be, but I don't necessarily see that as necessarily a bad thing. I think it's quite important, if anything. I think you as the viewer, or even myself when I'm looking at other artists' work, it's important for us to kind of take what we can from it. Why do I like Caravaggio as much as I do? I like the theatricality, I like the violence, I like the contrast and the impact, and there's a lot about Caravaggio's work that is just so impressive. But some people will resonate in a different way than I do towards Caravaggio's work. And you guys are going to probably look at my work and think of it very differently. Each one of you is probably going to look at it and take something different from it. Some of you are going to like it, some of you are not going to like it. That's also a fact. That is also something that we've got, as artists, got to deal with. Because like, let's be honest with you, most of us are quite prickly, quite proud, quite self-absorbed. And I include myself in that. It's not like I'm criticizing anyone else, but it is a fact. It is kind of a fact amongst us creative people. We kind of are, we're very kind of not so much introverted, but we've got kind of like a degree of self-regard. And the fact that the communicative aspects of it, where that kind of dissonance between the viewer and the artist, you can either embrace it or you can fight against it. And I think if you try and fight against it, you're in hiding to nothing personally. You know, I've got to kind of almost let go of the piece once I've finished it. If I'm going to show it off to people, if I'm going to put it up in a gallery or sell it on my website or whatever, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I think if you're investing in a piece of art, then, you know, you should do it for the reasons because you love the art. Another bugbear of mine at the moment is the, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but there's a website that I see get advertised quite a lot on YouTube called Masterworks. Do you know what, guys? As an artist, I'm gonna say one thing to you. If you want to invest in artists, whether it's me or someone else, I really don't care. Invest in art that you love, and invest in artists that are making art now. Whether you're going to an art fair, whether you see someone on Instagram that you really like, whether you're on YouTube and you see another artist like myself talking about their work, go buy their work, man. Invest in their work. Again, whether it's me or anyone else, you know, it's irrelevant. Invest in artists who are making art now. You don't need to invest in Van Gogh. Van Gogh's dead, right? Van Gogh has, you know, unfortunately the guy didn't sell many paintings while he was alive, but he's selling for quite a lot of money now. And a lot of them artworks, like, look at it this way, a good example is Van Gogh's Sunflowers. That was bought by a Japanese bank and stuck in storage, only to be seen on occasion when a gallery somewhere in the world wants to rent it out for a show. But for the most part, that work is never going to be seen by the human eye. But if you buy a piece that you really love from an artist who's making art now, in whatever style and however they're doing it, support them, buy their work, or support them by giving them a like, or, you know, leaving comments, boost them up on Instagram, boost them up on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever. Support artists who are making art now, because it's hard, you know, it's tough enough out there for any artist to make a name for themselves, you know. And one thing I would encourage my audience, if there is one out there, you know, I appreciate at the moment it's pretty small. Go out there, support artists who are making art now, and buy work that you really love, whether you understand it or you don't. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there for now. So, you know, if you are buying work or if you are looking to support other artists, please support them. And if you are making work, you know, as always, share it with the world in whatever way you see fit. Anyway, my name's John Cloud. This is John's Dark Heart. And as always, you are very welcome. Till next time.